Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show for creative agencies, the go-to resource for agency owners looking to scale their business. Join us every week to stay ahead of the curve and position your agency for future success.
Welcome back to another episode of the Virtual CPA Success Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Joey Kinney, and I'm joined with everyone's favorite accountant turned Tommy Bahama cover model, Jody Grundon. Jody, how are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Joey. Love the intro.
I'm excited for our chat today, Jody. We're joined by Peter Van Nest, who's a Pinnacle guide based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. I'll let him introduce himself, but we're really looking forward to talking today about his journey, not just as a Pinnacle guide, but some of the stuff he does outside of the business, and excited to learn more about a group that I've worked with through my time at Summit, but could really stand to learn a lot more about in terms of how we can start helping our clients that way. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Appreciate the shout out as well. Jody, it's always a pleasure hanging with you. So this is a good time for us to tell tall tales, if you will.
Exactly.
Yep.
We do have
I'll jump in first and just give you a thumbnail sketch of what I've done and where I've been. I spent a career in med tech, specifically in the hearing space, anything to do with hearing loss. So that's hearing aids, clinical audiometers, working with doctors, hospitals, clinics. And I had an opportunity to take that career to a global level where my last 15, 20 years, I was engaged in opening various countries on behalf of the global company that I worked for. There was a methodology to it, and I think we could talk about that today, where I went through with a very small team, and we looked at the marketplace. Was the government willing to help out with medicine and healthcare? I looked at the industry. Are the professionals, the doctors, the technicians, the audiologists, are they excited and capable professionals to be able to carry out the work? And then finally, I look at the employees, and are these people excited to come to work every day? Do they want to be a part of something bigger and make a contribution? And if I could check those boxes, then the decision was, do we present to the board to have an investment in a particular country? If we had mixed results, maybe we start with our foot in the water and move into a distributor model. And then finally, there were times when it wouldn't make sense at all, and it was better for us to simply move out of the market and give it time. So that would be sell and diversify. Through that experience, I think the Pinnacle community was a unique opportunity to meet like-minded business guides, Joey. And I call them guides, not necessarily coaches or consultants, because what I have found with coaches and consultants, there's some very talented people out there. Many of those people can write a book, but few of those people can actually go and deliver on the results and have the direct experience. And so as a business guide, I firmly believe that I tie in with the team that's going to climb the mountain, from the CEO to the janitor. We're all in it together. And if we do it right, we can all celebrate success when it comes. And getting to success also means that we're going to fail miserably. How do you fail fast? How do you learn from what you fail? And how do you get up and keep going? So that's my introduction in a nutshell in terms of Pinnacle and where I've been. And I'll say, feel free to hit me with whatever topic comes to mind.
Hey, Joey, real quick, Joey, before you go into it, got a quick question. So Pinnacle, Peter, can you kind of tell the folks that really don't know what Pinnacle, never heard of Pinnacle before, what is Pinnacle, and how does that kind of compare to other organizations that are out there? And if you can give us kind of a background there, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's a good time to do that as we start to unpack this thing. If you think about Pinnacle, obviously the analogy that comes to mind is climbing a mountain. And as you climb a mountain, you're always looking at a peak down range, what we're going to do next. And it's important to get to that peak, but by getting there, you've got to be carefully planning your course of ascent, as well as how you continue to move on the mountain. To me, you'll hear a lot of things that we could talk about, like base camp. You do a quarterly lookout. How's it going? What did we do well? What did we fail at? Where do we need to put our resources? Together, those type of things allow you to string together not just a climb, but you guys have all climbed a tree, climbed a hill. You get to the top, and all of a sudden the question becomes, good for us, what's next? When I think about Pinnacle, Jody, I immediately go to meeting my client, looking at the business, where the business is in their life cycle. What are the three biggest challenges that the business faces? And ultimately, if you jump in and start there, you immediately can begin to add value, because you got to get team members to do this together. We all have to row the boat in the same direction. Otherwise, we're not going to be nearly as effective. Or the
Hmm.
visionary, the CEO, the leader, they're going to be working 80 hours a week, and the question is, when are they going to burn out and say enough? I can't do this anymore. And then finally, you asked a good point too. In a nutshell, what are these things? Pinnacle, EOS, Traction. There's a bunch of business consulting operations out there, as well as groups, masterminds. All of them, in my mind, become part of a community that looks at a business operating system. And what we should focus on today is really peeling it back and talking about, in a business operating environment, what are the things that everybody needs to do to be on a successful path? And then you bring your own personality, your own passion into it. You make it individual. But that's the piece for me where I look at Pinnacle and say, I have the ability to jump in and make a contribution where the client is in their journey, and I have the ability to grab 120 different tools from a very large toolbox and a community of other business guides around the country, where I can say, hey guys, I've got a unique issue here and I don't have a solution top of mind. I can go get 15 different ideas and find something that works that we can try and get results in 90 days. Uh,
So Pinnacle. So basically, it's a guide or a coach that helps on a regular basis. Is it the way that you work with your clients? Is that meeting on a weekly, monthly, quarterly? What's the kind of the cadence that you typically meet with clients? And if you can kind of give us that the kind of in the behind the scenes look there, I'd
yeah,
be greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I have a new client, for me, I'm in for a couple of days. We're going to do a full day session. And when I say full day, that can be 7 to 5 p.m. It could also be 7 to 3 p.m. because people are physically exhausted. You're mentally working on, what is our purpose? What's our core value? What are our problems? There's a lot of heavy lifting that happens just to get into the groove. And I'll say in the early learning sessions, we're together frequently. It might be on site for a couple of days. It's certainly weekly phone calls, and it's also getting to know
Mm-hmm.
the management team. In every company, it's funny how 80% of the work falls to 20% of the people. Well, who are those people doing the work? And I'm okay with that fact, but how can we get everybody in the company either to be aware of where we're going as a company, or can they do some of the things that are necessary for a business to succeed, but may not be strategically significant? Because I want our best talent, best minds thinking strategically about where the company's going. All in and all done, if you look back over a 12-month period, you start out very intense, getting to prove results, finding value, the direction for the strategy to have success. And after a period of 6 to 12 months, Jody, it turns into a quarterly uh, touch base, either on site, through Zoom. We can do phone calls to get there. And what I really appreciate is that I tell my clients straight up, if we're together for a short period of time, that might be 18 months to a minimum of 3 years. And by the time we're at 3 years in, the client, the company, the team will know the tools. They'll have the skills and abilities. At that point, it's time to begin to transition me out. And typically, I look to people that would be called a COO, Chief Operating Officer. In a
Mm-hmm.
smaller business, that could be a director of professional support. It's generally some
Mm-hmm.
type of operations person who would then take over the same role that I'm playing to help the company move. But by that point,
Mm-hmm.
3 years in, they've scaled it to a point where they've got somebody on staff doing this work.
So it's kind of taking over the role of the COO for the most part, is what it sounds like,
Yeah,
with operations and working closely with the CEO, CFO, and the other C-suite folks if they're at that stage of growth that their business.
yeah, you're absolutely right. For some guys, they'll jump on a fractional COO role, and they'll attend weekly meetings. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I keep the flexibility. For me, it's really a discussion with the client and the business entity, and what is it that they need. Because for me, as a consultant or a guide, I can make recommendations, but ultimately the visionary, the CEO, has to make the decision in terms of giving me a course to sail and where to take the ship. And that oftentimes that's not the clearer we are in that message, the easier it is for the team to see where we're going as a group.
What I love about frameworks, and that's kind of how I'm feeling about Pinnacle, is it's kind of a framework to a philosophy, if you will, for operating your business. Is there's usually a set of tenets or principles or something that's kind of guiding this philosophy. And you mentioned on our call before we were recording that there were 5 things that Pinnacle views. Can you talk about those 5 pillars
Yeah,
of
I'd be
Pinnacle?
happy to. In fact, it's funny because for me, it doesn't matter which framework you're working on. They all have some element of it. It's how well they can adapt to the needs of the
Mm-hmm.
business that's trying to scale. But the first one is people. You got to find the right people and put them in the right seats on the bus. There's a tremendous amount of literature out there that talks about that thought alone. But ultimately, you've got
Mm-hmm.
to be skilled at putting together a job description, a staffing plan, having an interview team to help make sure that the candidate has a technical skill set to make sure that they can add value, but also that they fit the culture. I mean, I love Jody because when we work together, I need Mr. Bahama with me on the boat in Florida when we're having a session because it would be wildly incongruent to have somebody show up in a business suit expecting that we're going to be in the boardroom all day and we're out in the sun and they're melting. And I have been in experiences when you've seen that, it becomes a very visible problem at the time that you're experiencing it, that this may not be a good match. People is the first one. Once you get the people in the right seats on the bus, and by in the right seats, you've got a sales leader, a marketing leader, potentially human resources, operations, uh, accounting. All of those things are great. And then the challenge is they all scale and have different titles as the business goes through different revenue cycles. But it's very important that the visionary, whoever leads the business, what's the story that brought the owner into the realm of wanting to be a business person, uh, that
Mm-hmm.
purpose has to be communicated so that others on the management team, and in fact, everybody in the company, has to know what their role is to get out of bed every morning and show up at work, whether it's working hybrid or remote, fully remote, or being physically in the office or meeting with clients. When that purpose is clear, to me, it's as easy as saying, all of a sudden, we're in the same boat, gentlemen, and we know where we're going, and we know that we're all going to row in the same direction. And I'm sure you've had experiences where all of a sudden we're rowing and rowing on the left side, nobody's rowing on the right side, and we're just doing circles. I've had a lot of experience in that area, and then
Mm-hmm.
as we get acclimated around purpose, that's followed quickly by saying the people that are doing the work should simply write it down. Start with a paper and pencil. If in order to get work, what do we have to do? We have to put together a bid. We have to have pricing. We have to put together an offer for a client. We have to get the work, and then we have to do the work. So operations builds something, we put together services, we've got to provide some value for that work that we're ultimately going to get paid on. And so it's get the work, do the work, get paid for the work. To me, that's really the essence of a playbook. And it starts out with paper and pencil, but ultimately, there are wonderful software applications where you can collaborate and share elements of work, a 15-step workflow. You can see it as a schematic, you can see it as linked documents, as attachments. Those are really valuable things because they help the organization do business more efficiently. We've got the playbook in place, and now all of a sudden it really turns on to performance, and that performance is really the role of a strong management team, because that management team has to put in place KPIs, key performance indicators, and they vary by industry, they even vary by company. But an
Mm-hmm.
indicator would allow the organization to know when to step on the gas pedal. Let's put a lot more money into marketing because typically in the United States, we see sales increases after the summer months. Kids go back to school. Parents have more time without having to entertain the kids. They start to think more seriously about getting the year's accomplishments put together. Naturally, marketing might want to increase the spending during that period, and you want to track how successful are those marketing campaigns. And conversely, an organization might also want to know what the KPIs are for pushing the brake pedal. When is it time to slow down when the business indicators are telling us we're about to roll off a cliff? I don't advertise at all in August, and certainly in Italy or I'll say in the northern part of Europe, everybody goes on holidays and there is no business that happens. And so the business reporting had better reflect that we're going to see a lot of light sales. We're having a lot of holidays. Those are the type of things that you need to be attuned to so that you're managing the business cycles to manage performance. Joey, when those four things come into alignment, when you look at the people, the purpose of the work, the playbooks, and they're performing as a team, the end result of that could be profits. It could be having calm and peace in the organization. Maybe that means we're working 4-day work weeks. It also could mean that it's a lifestyle business. Hey, we're going to do all of our management trips in exotic locales. And for me in my career, it was wonderful to plan trips to safari or to Machu Picchu in Peru. I had a group of people where we simply said, if we're going to be successful, we want one of the outcomes of that success to be seeing the world, because you would never find the time to do it as a group, do it as a family, pay those expensive bills. But we built it into our business model. And I'll say that becomes important because when you share common values, now you can plan for success. You just have to be very clear how you define success. Again, I'll come back and say that's why I like Pinnacle, because the community as a business framework really wants the team to start with a white piece of paper and imagine stuff. You want an outsider, a guide, a consultant. You want somebody who's not familiar with the challenges of the business to call out, what would a moonshot look like? If we were to say that we had no obstacles, but we could go to the moon, how would that look? And that's where you'll start to see some of these ideas where, nope, we've never done it that way. We've never thought about it. Okay, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about something like that.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that the five principles of Pinnacle all start with P
yes.
in some way, shape, or form. I like the consistency of that. It makes it easy to think about the framework from that perspective. One of the things that I like that you kind of mentioned earlier is it's part of the thing is figuring out how to fit this framework and make it work for any number of situations, because all businesses are different. Same industry, you can have 90 different businesses in the same industry, even in the same location. They're all going to be a little bit different. When you're looking to work with somebody like Summit, for instance, or some of our folks that we work with who listen to this show, or tend to be very much either fractional CFOs or working in the space of the accountant. Outside of, obviously fitting in perfectly on a yacht in Miami, what are you looking for from a partner like Jody when we come into these meetings from an operational perspective?
What attracted me to Jody was that he had me in the very early stages. Not only is he a professional, but I love the way he describes the accountant and the fractional finance group. And the way he described it to me was, Peter, these guys are fabulous when they produce the reports. They give you compliance. They show you the performance of the business. But we both agreed quickly that they're looking in the rearview mirror. What happened to the business in the last reporting period? And it's where, when Jody was telling me where he adds value and where the firm is looking forward, it's what's happening in the next 6 to 12 months. Everything that I've just laid out in terms of a vision is important for Jody, for the finance team to know about, because how can they have a role in making that reality for the whole company? For example, an employee may not care about a quarterly result. They may not care about a cost of sales. They may not care about a number of different KPIs in the finance world. But if Jody's talking to a car wash operator and they're talking about what the goal is in the next 6 months. Maybe, hey guys, in the last period, we washed 25 cars an hour. We got to make 30 cars an hour to make our goal for the year. How are we going to do that? And those are the type of things where forward looking, getting excited about the future allows a business to define a culture that's going to be unique from any other business in the car washing space. Because when you look at it, washing a cars can be broken down to a commodity, a pretty regular routine. But some of the places that I've been that are pushing the envelope, the people are actually having fun. They're wearing polo shirts, whereas maybe the old uniform was a T-shirt. It says something about the team in terms of how they show up and interact together. That sense of energy is why people want to do business there. And that, business can be broken down to a framework, but I'll also say that people want to be in relationship with other people. I don't need to know you by name, but I like it when somebody walks by and they smile and say top of the day to you. There's a
Hmm.
connection.
Yeah, kind of a follow up to that would be, as I'm under the philosophy that as a CFO, my background comes from a lot of different areas. I've been a CFO or a virtual CFO for trucking companies. I've been a virtual CFO for construction companies, all kinds. I've been a virtual CFO for repair shops, truck repair shops. Lot of different, restaurants, you name it. And then, but the one that I've got the most experience with is the creative agency space, digital agencies, web design, web development, all that kind of stuff. My background and philosophy is that a good CFO really doesn't have to have a ton of experience in any of those different areas. That they have to be able to take the experience that they do have and apply it to those areas. And so they have to understand the vernacular, do their homework, make sure they understand. We're talking about a bid versus a proposal versus SOW. Whatever the vernacular is for that industry is important, so that you know the industry. But my philosophy as a good CFO can manage any of those. I could be completely wrong, Joe. You may have a different position on that, but I'd be curious, Peter, on what your position is. As a business guy, do you have to know a specific industry inside and out in order to be able to give great advice and guidance to it, or can you take what you've learned from other industries and push it into that industry and give that same equally good advice?
Yeah. For me, it's clear. It's why I choose to work with you, Jody, and I invite you out of all the other financial professionals to talk to the clients, the prospective clients that I do business with. Uh, the business framework is something that you learn, but it is critical that the team brings the vernacular and creates their own targets the uh, to the calendar, to their strategic plan, so that the summation of the work that the group is doing is uh, is is meaningful to them. And I'll say, it's when I heard Jody tell me his why story, when he told me about his background that he's just given you the thumbnail for here, I was I was like, Jody, you're a great accountant. I got you. I can put you in a pigeonhole. And respectfully, Jody said, don't put me in a box, because it's what I'm doing next. It's what I'm doing now that you're going to want to hear about. And it's that forward looking sense of what are the KPIs and how to influence them. We use the car wash example. The other thing that stands out with Jody and his team is that the guy's always got a sense of optimism. I mean, the energy that when he walks in the room, the clothes that he wears, the way that he connects is the same thing that I talked about early in the podcast, Joy, when we talked about roping in. I don't care if I'm talking to the CEO or the janitor. Everybody at the company that's getting a paycheck is important and plays a role. And so, to your point, Jody, I'll take careful notes and I'll do my homework so I have an idea as to the vernacular of the industry, whether the industry
Hmm.
is a commodity or a niche, whether we're growing in that industry or whether it's consolidating rapidly. You got to be aware of the world around you and your environment. The magic
Right.
happens when you're in session, when you're in relationship, when you're working on solving problems together. That's where you find the magic, because there is no silver bullet, as much as there is no single way to be successful in business. And that's why I say you surround yourself with those guides and mentors that have similar values and want to do the same type of things that you want to do. I wore a suit for 30 years, loved wearing a suit,
Mhm.
and it was appropriate in the right place. I'm also a big fan of getting together on the water and using that as my boardroom. So
Hmm.
that's something that I look for in the people that I choose to work with, Joey.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. Your boardroom, your boat. How are you using your boat as a tool, I guess, to help your clients out?
Yeah, exactly. Well, as I come to you from the back, actually the aft deck of the vessel, we have
Hmm.
3 or 4 different areas. These, I'll call them small and intimate areas. We've got a table for 6 on the aft deck. Inside in the cabin, just behind the glass and the door here, there's a salon that seats magically 6 to 8 people. And then upstairs on the fly bridge, when we're running the boat, going to watch the sunset after a nice day of work, again, the team can work in different places throughout the day. So it makes, for me, it's very fun to be able to have an area where you can have lunch, you physically get up and move, change positions, use different technology. And at the same time, have you ever been in a meeting where, I don't know, sales and marketing might get in an argument? And if they disagree in a boardroom setting, you've got the elephant in the room and it can be awkward and uncomfortable. But in my case on the boat, I've had to let the sales and marketing people go upstairs. We've got a slushy machine there, so we can choose what we're going to put in there: margaritas, pina coladas, what have you. But they're going to solve the problem over whatever they have, whatever drink is in the machine. They're going to have to solve it, and then come back and tell the group, what are we doing to move forward? Because ultimately that's where the work, if you will, happens. The team has to be in alignment, because if the team is in disagreement, if we've got a lot of corporate politics, if we have personalities that don't fit together, you've got to work through that with a pretty clear eye for a plan, a transition plan to improve performance, or a transition plan to change people. Because the longer that goes on, the culture of the company can be negatively impacted far greater than they could if the problem was solved in that workspace. Um, but I truly am looking for people that want to have uh, the boat, the sunset, the cruise mentality, and still want to produce results. Because remember, as I mentioned earlier, I was working with a team of people, and we always wanted to find something a little creative, a little bit edgy. We found it with doing travel. We set up these worldwide trips where every 2 years, and then we also had to pay for them. So we worked with the board to make sure that we had performance indicators that allowed us to execute that plan.
Hmm. Yeah, I loved it because I've experienced it firsthand, traveling down to St. Pete, visiting Peter, and then some of the folks on the boat, and kind of going through that situation was a great experience for sure. And I was kind of curious on how things are planning. So it sounds like it's going pretty successful.
Yeah, we have. I'll say my book of business is full, and I've been able to select the people that I want to work with as much as they want to work with me. It's kind of nice with
Hmm.
Pinnacle, because I've had people say respectfully, Peter, our company can't do that right now, and I understand that. Uh, what I've also been able to do is to take another Pinnacle guide and make a referral, because all the time that we're in conversation talking about, is this the right business framework for you? The 5 Ps, Joey. If it is, then the second question has to be, am I the right person to guide you through this process?
Right.
And I have had I won't I have learned or I have failed fast when I've gone through and made shortcuts where, sure, I'm going to fly up north in the wintertime and spend my weekend in a foot of snow. I have learned that I pay the price for that. And so
Hmm.
at the same time, that's a oversimplified story, but when it's not a good fit, within a couple of months, I come back and say, guys, I'm excited that you like the framework, but for whatever reason, we may not be the best fit. And I'd like to put you in touch with somebody that I think would help your business elevate and produce the result that you're looking for. That's the goal here.
I think the magic sauce really isn't necessarily the program itself, but it's the consultant, the guide, the coach that you're actually
Oh,
working
that's
with is truly the fit. When you've got somebody that you trust, they can make a ton of small mistakes and it's not a big issue. But if you don't trust that person, get along, that small mistake becomes a giant issue pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Joey, I gotta tell you too. When Jody and I first met, I told you my first impression was he's an accountant. He's an accountant and doing finance work, and so I had a stereotype of what I thought of my new friend Jody. But ultimately, Jody did one thing uniquely for me that is one of the reasons that I'll go to the ends of the earth with him now and have him back on the boat, and we will have a relationship. It's because Jody, in essence, told me his why story. He said, here's why I do what I do. I've had all those experiences. And I also recognize that I want to enjoy my life and I want to bring excitement and energy to the clients that I work with. And he does that through looking forward. And he does that through communicating in ways that make sense to everybody on the team, whether you're reading a financial report or you're punching the clock and you're just showing up to do the task. Both are important. And I got to tell you, too, it wasn't long after I heard Jody's story that I said, yep, we've got to have a beer and I got to tell you my why story. Because in the same way here, I like what you've done with Pinnacle. Everything's a P, it's a framework. There's no magic there. And Jody is right when he says it's the person that is helping lead you and helping you solve the problem that makes the difference. And so I found myself with a client in South Africa. I'll go back 10 years. And we were hoisting a cold one, having a beer. And I simply said, why do you do what you do, Lee? And he turned at the end of his discussion and said, Peter, what I'd really like to do is have you help me grow my business in 3 years. And we quickly put together the plan, the framework, and we executed it. And I came back to Johannesburg, South Africa. It wasn't 3 years. It was about 2 years into it. And what I first noticed when I walked through his office was that he had a team of technicians building medical parts, medical hearing aids. He had a team when I was there the first time, 15 people. People were working. It was a small group. This time when I went back, there was 30 people in the office. People were talking, sharing stories. The energy was over the top. All of a sudden, in the corner, I heard somebody call me Mr. Pita. When I travel, everybody tends to make up a name for me, but it was Mr. Pita in South Africa. And all of a sudden, I turned to Lee and say, what happened? Did I do something wrong? And Lee said, no, Peter, that's Nunu. You met her when you were here in the beginning 2 years ago. And today, what you don't realize is that Nunu is the first person in her family, 4 generations, that was able to go out and purchase a house in South Africa. And Nunu came up and gave me the biggest hug that I've ever had. And I'll say, Joey, it was at that point that I recognized that when Jody and I sit around and talk about why we do what we do, and we can tell you how we do that work, the biggest thing is why we choose to help people the way that we do. Because to me, that's transformational. It immediately said, yep, I go to work every day, but those are the things that I take with me that I will take with me for a lifetime. And, to this day, I keep in touch with Lee and I keep in touch with Nunu just to make sure that things are still moving in their life, good things and bad things. But it's always nice to be able to be part of something that makes a difference in a lot of people's lives.
Well, and thank you for sharing. That was a great story. And I think I speak for Jody too. I could sit here and listen to you talk about stories like that for hours and hours, preferably, on a yacht, looking at the sunset, perhaps drinking a frozen margarita of sorts. But it is time for my favorite part of the show, which is the fun question at the end, which Jody has been working on this entire episode. Jody, what do you got?
Well, I think my question is fairly easy, fairly obvious too. So we talked a lot of different locations, places, where we've been, all that kind of stuff. My question is, what's the most unique place that you've visited over the years and why? Joe, I'm going to start with you on this. Most unique place you visited and why?
Okay. So Jody, you'll enjoy this story. So one of these spots, so I live, Peter, for you, I live in New Mexico, which is kind of in the middle of the desert. We're not big boat people, which should shock nobody. So you started mentioning aft deck and I was like, yeah, I don't know what that's talking about. But we visited Sedona, Arizona, which Jody has a great story about Sedona that's for another podcast. But we my wife and I decided to elope to Sedona in 2019, and it is a place that, aside from the shaman that you can go visit if that's what you're into, is one of the most visually stunning places I've ever been to. And it's something where I've told people you have to experience it in person to really understand the majesty of the rocks and just the size of all of the stuff that's going on there. It's a place that does have its own sort of energy, shall we say.
Absolutely.
Nice.
But one of my favorite places
Nice.
to go
Peter,
to.
how about yours?
If I had to pick one, I'm gonna, hmm, I can bucket it down to three, Jody, and I think I'll do
Okay.
a fast round of three. As
Okay.
I like frameworks, I bucket my three around three things that I adore when I travel. One is food. The second
Mm-hmm.
is natural beauty,
Mhm.
and the third would
Mm-hmm.
be man-made contributions. So for food, hands down, Italy. The pasta, the food, the freshness, the way that the people operate around
I'm going
meals.
there next week, actually, just so you know.
Uh,
Yep.
Perfect. Give
I'm
me a
going
city.
there. Mm-hmm.
Where you go? Where you going next week?
Bari. Am I saying it
Bari.
right? Bari.
Uh, yeah, I'm gonna have to research
Keep
that
going.
one.
Keep
And
going. I'll look it up. Make sure I got the
yeah,
right
okay.
city here.
Yeah, perfect. So my first is food, Italy. My second is man-made beauty. I'll call out the Great Wall of China, that is hundreds of miles. When you see it in person and watch how that thing rolls over the mountains, the work that it took to do that is simply stunning. To me, that was the most memorable. And then finally, for natural beauty, going on safari in Africa. If everybody had the
Yep.
opportunity to see animals and see how life, the circle of life, operates, I believe a lot of the problems that we think are big issues, those things all melt away.
Yeah, you killed me because you stole my my number one there. It's Borgo, not Bari.
Boy,
Borgo, which is in Borgo Extended, which is in Saveltri, Italy.
Your Italian is getting very good.
Yeah, it's not really good, but
Yeah, exactly.
heading there. Actually, it's on the eastern side of Italy there. Um, but Safari, that was my number one. I was gonna mention. Just got back about 6 months or so ago from a safari, and that was very enlightening for the same reasons that you had mentioned. You know, the circle of life. You know, basically the different animals, how close you can get to them. You know, the experience that you had, and but not just the animals themselves, but the people that you met there. You know, the people are great people,
Yeah,
humble. You know, they really had yeah, it was just really a great experience. You know, being around those folks and going to Johannesburg and going to South Africa, meeting some folks down there, and you know all the great experiences. And I say when meeting people, it's I think when you go on an experience like that, you've got to meet people. You just can't be secluded by
absolutely.
yourself. Maybe that's your thing. Definitely not my thing. I like to get a chance to meet the folks
Yeah,
that are in the area. Bahamas was a great example. We got off the resort and had a lady in the Bahamas, you know, just kind of talk about, you know, drive us around, talk about everything there. And we were able to treat her to a really nice dinner afterwards, and you know, completely unexpected. And that was that was a cool experience. I'll never forget. My wife won't forget either. You know, so those are the kind of the really cool ones. You know, we went to Bora Bora, and that was a neat experience too. Again, for the same reasons, you know, get a chance to meet, you know, the folks that are there and hear their stories and what they've got to say. And you know, those are, like I said, those are the unique experiences. The shaman, can't get away from that from Sedona. That was definitely an experience and a half. And you know, but you know, all those different things. I could probably take a little bit of each of the different places I've been to and say, you know, hey, this was made this one great. And for those that didn't make it, it was those that were overly commercialized. You know, those that are sitting in a resort, never left the resort for any particular reason. And you know, after a while, that's great. But after a while, all the resorts seem to be the same, you know,
no,
just in a different place in the world.
yeah, absolutely
Mhm.
true,
Mhm.
absolutely true. One of my favorite relationship stories is that as I've traveled the world, uh, I've always asked, I've tried to find in whatever the local language is, tell me what the word is for cheers, chin chin in
Oh,
Chinese, or
Mm.
Nostrovia if you're Russian,
Okay.
Egi Shigedra if you're speaking Hungarian. But in that process of getting in relationship with people, the one thing that stood out was that most of those people that we were having a drink and saying a toast, it was to the end of the day. It was to something small in just being present in the moment. The best piece was that many of those people that I talked to would offer a bottle of grappa or a bottle of wine, something from their area. And I always travel with a Sharpie pen because it is immediately I take my bottle, the gift, and I draw a line in terms of where we finished drinking on the day that we drank uh, that cheers glass together. And then everybody present signs the bottle. And so what I have found is a great way of saying goodbye is not goodbye, but I will see you again. So my bottle is going to stay in your house. We have all signed the bottle, so we know where the level is when I left. And if I should return and it's too long and the bottle is empty, anybody who drinks from my bottle has to take this Sharpie and sign their name to it. So what happens is that it's sand running through the hourglass, and it's not goodbye. It's until I see you again. And I'll tell you, that's another
Mhm.
great way because I've had people FaceTime in the middle of the night where they say, Peter, is it okay if we drink from your bottle? We've all signed it, or the bottle's almost empty. When do you come back? So I love those things, Jody. As you say, when you travel, you've got to do one thing that makes that place special and memorable.
Mm-hmm. 100% agree.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation. As I mentioned, I think we could do this for hours and not A, get bored, but B, also learn some things about traveling the world and experiences and relationships. For those folks in the audience who either want to learn more about you or are interested in learning more about Pinnacle and maybe how a Pinnacle guide might be a good fit for their business, where can we go find some more information about
Thanks
that?
for asking. CrazyGoodSolutions.com will point you to me. And if you look at PinnacleBusinessGuides.com, that'll take you to the framework and show you more about the community and how they operate as well.
Beautiful. Well, that's it for this episode. We're looking forward to talking with you all again here real soon. Thank you so much,
you,
Look
everybody.
forward to having you guys down to Florida very soon. Until next
Yep.
time, thank you, gentlemen.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website, summitcpa.net, to get more tips and strategy for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.